alert from the FBI after foreign hackers break into state election systems right here at home. Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Nauert. The FBI Cyber Division now warning election officials nationwide after discovering that hackers penetrated election databases in 2 states. The urgent bulletin asking for help for cybersecurity professionals and also system administrators, stating the information in this product is only for members of their own organization and those with direct need to know. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, is dialed in on this one. She has more for us from Washington. Catherine, tell us what hackers were able to get.
Well, thanks, Heather. This 4-page FBI flash alert, first obtained by Yahoo News and independently confirmed by Fox, was sent to election officials after foreign hackers targeted voter registration databases in 2 states. The FBI reports that 8 IP addresses, each a unique numeric code identifying an individual computer, used readily available software to scan the Board of Election websites for vulnerabilities. Then, after a successful breach, voter data was stolen. At least 1 IP address was used in both attacks, suggesting coordination. The FBI alert asks that states contact their Board of Elections and determine if any similar activity to their logs, both inbound and outbound, has been detected. The same threat prompted Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson to hold a conference call with state election officials in mid-August, offering federal experts to scan for additional weaknesses and to shore up the voting systems. While Homeland Security is responsible for protecting critical infrastructure like the power grid, there's a growing consensus among some cyber specialists that the federal government should also provide a safety net for the electoral process, from the national committees, DNC or RNC, to the actual voting process itself, Heather.
Wow, 72 days before the election. We'll certainly see if the federal government can do something on that. Catherine, do we know which 2 states?
There's been a lot of confusing information. Originally, Yahoo reported Illinois and Arizona. We believe Illinois was affected, but we are less clear on Arizona, Heather.
Right, Catherine Herridge, we'll check in with more from you on this. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Well, for more on this, Chris Direwald is Fox News' digital politics editor. Chris, obviously, if somebody hacks this, they could potentially manipulate the results of the 2016 election. This is a huge deal.
Well, we don't have any evidence yet that they're into the way that things are counted. And that anybody has gotten in so far. We don't know, but nobody's gotten in to meddle with the actual count. But they are in the place where they could mess up the voter rolls, and they could have a bunch of registered people be unregistered. Maybe that's the space that they're in, and that's a dangerous enough space. And even if they don't do it, Heather, even if they can't pull that off, if they are able, if these foreign entities are able to decrease further American confidence in the sanctity and good conduct of our elections, they may have done something just as damaging as actually affecting the outcomes themselves.
Well, this certainly plays right into what Donald Trump has been saying. You know, this is a rigged election, and one of those states that may have been targeted, as Catherine just mentioned, is Arizona, where he will be giving a speech on immigration on Wednesday.
And, you know, we have a long history of losing candidates or candidates who are behind complaining about the electoral process. We remember that when the Democrats lost in 2000, certainly Democrats have made a lot about what they say is voter suppression through voter identification laws that have been passed in various states, saying it's a deliberate attempt by Republicans to suppress turnout. So we have long-standing history in America of the sour grape side of the aisle saying, well, this was rigged. But now, if we have foreign powers working not necessarily in concert, but playing on those fears, playing on those anxieties, as Mr. Trump is out talking about those things, you could really have a crisis in confidence in an election system that, gosh darn it, works really well.
Yeah, affects us in quite a few ways. Gosh darn it, remember what actually may have sort of worked well? Remember those old hanging chads back from the good old days?
Yeah.
Yay, we hardly knew ye. Those seem like such a brilliant idea by comparison when you start to talk about Russians potentially hacking our election system and our voter rolls there. Gosh, remember that? The hanging chad?
Well, one thing,
the 2000
I bet paper ballots are coming back into vogue. I bet paper ballots will come back into vogue over time. I bet that's what happens.
In the meantime, Chris, you know our interns are like, a what? A hanging who? A hanging what? What did Chad do? What's he hanging from? All right. Chris, while I have you here, I want to ask you about this because Donald Trump is now spending $10 million in 9 battleground states. Those ads are targeting voters in Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida. And that's where the campaign has already been on the air, along with first-time ad buys in New Hampshire, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, and Nevada. But by comparison, Clinton is spending $68.2 million. So look at this. He's spending 4.3. She's spending 68.2. He just announces the $10 million. She's spending a lot more than he does.
Yes, I think the technical term for that is more. That is more. I think that's right. But look, Trump is playing catch up here, but he's playing now, right? The money is coming out. The ad is quite good. It's a very traditional kind of contrast ad. The economy, by the way, continues to be one of his stronger issues when we look at how voters perceive the two candidates. So he's coming out and saying, she's bad at the economy. Your taxes are going to go up. The economy is going to get worse. I'm good at the economy. I'm going to make America rich. And that's a good message for him.
It's still the top issue for voters, but this is a week where he's supposed to be talking about immigration, giving that big speech on Wednesday. Usually campaigns like to have a consistent theme. This one seems a little less sure-footed. Why not consolidate the message and just have one this week?
Well, the immigration is he's got to offload this inventory. This is something that he can't wait much longer to do. To do this turnabout on immigration, and it sounds like he's setting himself up, based on what we heard from his campaign advisors, it sounds like he's setting himself up for something of an about face on what critics would call amnesty, or some means by which people who have entered the United States illegally can stay or return home and then come back and stay. He's got to offload that inventory before it gets much later in the election. So it's he's got to get it done now, regardless of what his ad campaign is.
He talked about a softening of his position on immigration. Then he talked about a hardening. And then over the weekend, there was different talk about it. So how is that overall confusion? I think it's fair to call it that. How is that playing with voters right now?
Well, we don't know yet, and he's got a minute to try to sort this out. I think where you have to end up if you're Donald Trump is he's got to build the wall, or say he's going to build the wall. He's got to say he's going to do the whole thing. It's going to be 40 feet tall. It's going to have tunnel technology. It's going to be all this stuff. And he's got to emphasize border security so that as he pushes hard on that, he can then turn and say, but we are going to do this a little different internally so that we're not going to have a mass deportation force taking people out of the country. We have new Pew numbers out this week that basically say while Americans are concerned about criminal activity from illegal immigrants, they don't agree with Trump on the internal policies. So he's got to find a way to, as we would say in Washington, true that up.
True that up. Chris Stirewalt, thank you so much from Washington today.
You bet.
We'll see you again. Well, Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin, announcing today that she has decided to separate from her husband, disgraced former U.S. Congressman Anthony Weiner, amid new reports that he sent explicit photos to yet another woman over the past 19 months. But we're just learning about this today. Rob Schmidt is live in our New York City newsroom with more. Rob, tell us about this.
Yeah, Heather, this is Hillary Clinton's closest advisor, Huma Abedin, finally walking away from her marriage. Abedin just released a statement saying, after long and painful consideration and work on my marriage, I have made the decision to separate from my husband. Anthony and I remain devoted to doing what is best for our son, who is the light of our life. During this difficult time, I ask for respect and for privacy. This after a New York Post story revealing a news scandal. It is the third time that Anthony Weiner has publicly embarrassed himself and his family, caught sexting with a 40-something divorcee who told the Post that they've been in contact for 19 months but have never met in person. The most jarring photo is the smaller one you see right there, the small picture on the cover showing Weiner, now a house husband in his underwear, laying in bed right next to his toddler son, taking that photo. The Post reports that the woman, who's remaining anonymous, responded to that photo. You realize you can see your blank in that pic, using the former politician's last name to, of course, reference something else. Anthony Weiner was a Democratic congressman for the state of New York until 2011, when he resigned after a photo surfaced of him in his underwear that he had sent to a college student in Washington state. Weiner then tried to revive his career by running for mayor of New York City in 2013, and things were looking okay until his numbers tanked when he was caught sexting yet again under the name Carlos Danger. Now, Donald Trump this afternoon releasing a statement on this, concerned about the judgment of his opponent in this and her closest aide, quote, saying, "It's just another example of Hillary Clinton's bad judgment. It is possible that our country and its security have been greatly compromised by this." So far, no response from the former politician, but it does appear that Anthony Weiner has deactivated his Twitter account. Heather.
About time. Rob Schmidt, thank you so much, and welcome to Fox News. I know you're pretty new around here, so I look forward to meeting you in person.
Absolutely.
In politics now, Hillary Clinton taking a break from the campaign trail today as newly released emails shed light on connections between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation while Clinton served as Secretary of State. Right now, the State Department briefing is getting underway. We are keeping an eye on that in case any news is made out of that. But in the meantime, as we watch, senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel is live for us in Washington. Mike, is there evidence that the Clinton Foundation controversy has hurt Clinton in the poll numbers so far?
Heather, that's not clear at this point. The pollster handling the Monmouth poll notes the margin has narrowed since Hillary Clinton's post-convention bounce, but she is holding on to an edge over Donald Trump among key voting blocs. The brand new Monmouth survey has Clinton with 46% support of likely voters, 39% backing Trump, 7% supporting Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, and 2% for the Green Party's Jill Stein. Yet the Clinton Foundation controversy is not going away, such as efforts to get foundation donors seats at an official lunch with Chinese President Hu Jintao. Emails from December 2010 between State Department aide Huma Abedin and Clinton Foundation executive Doug Band discussed possible guests at lunch with the Chinese president, including 3 executives from groups that had donated millions of dollars to the foundation. The interim head of the DNC says about the overall foundation controversy, it's no big deal.
Someone who's a donor, somebody who's an activist saying, I want access, I want to come into a room and I want to meet people. We often criminalize behavior that is normal, and I don't see what the smoke is.
But other well-known Democrats have called for either closing the foundation or stopping foreign donations to it now. Heather?
Mike, so tell us about the video, kind of switching gears a little bit, that Fox has now tracked down of another controversy that involved the Clintons and the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, on that tarmac in Arizona. This, of course, as the federal government was investigating her. Tell us about that.
Well, that's right. Yeah, the meeting was widely reported on at the time, but now we've tracked down surveillance video. It was when Attorney General
Washington, thank you. Well, taking a closer look at the latest emails in one exchange between the Clinton Foundation executive, Doug Band, and Hillary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin. Band requests that Dr. Judith Rodin, she was president of the Rockefeller Foundation. That foundation, by the way, had given somewhere between $10 and $25 million to the Clinton Foundation. The request was that she be seated at Vice President Joe Biden's table at a 2010 lunch with the president of China. Abedin then replies to Doug Band, I'll ask. So let's bring in our political panel to talk about this. Joe Trippi, former Howard Dean campaign manager and a Fox News contributor, and Mercedes Schlapp is a Republican strategist and a former spokeswoman for President George W. Bush. Welcome to you both. I want to go back to something that was said just a moment ago, and that was that it was considered to be normal behavior. Is that normal behavior?
Well,
Mercedes,
I think
why don't you go ahead?
Well, it's not normal behavior. You don't want to be mixing the charity, nonprofit work with the dealings in the State Department. It was very clear that Hillary Clinton came out and during her confirmation hearing saying she would disclose all of her donors. She would there would be a firewall between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation. The more these emails keep coming out and the more of this fallout between this cozy relationship between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation, I will tell you, it almost comes across as if the State Department is the personal receptionist for the Clinton Foundation. And those are the types of activities where it is falling into that appearance of the conflict of interest, this perception that it is pay for play. And I think that's why, for Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation is becoming a big headache for her and her campaign.
Okay, so a big headache, at least somewhat publicly. But, Joe, I'm not sure how well this is going to resonate with voters. Is this something that voters are really going to care about, that the appearance that donors were given special access to top government officials?
I think when the donors are Melinda Gates, Nobel Prize winners, the Rockefeller Foundation,
the foreign governments.
Well, hold on a second. Also, one of the top honchos at UBS, a major Wall Street firm.
Go on, Mercedes. It's all your show. Go ahead.
That was me talking there, Joe. But I was pointing out, correctly so, that some of those big donors don't just, act like it's all like pie in the sky, kumbaya stuff. I mean, some of them were big Wall Street banks, the very ones that Hillary Clinton claims to rail against, but has taken so much money from.
Yeah, as I was saying, people like Melinda Gates, Nobel Prize winners, the Rockefeller Foundation, who have both would be meeting with the Secretary of State, regardless of who was in power or who was in the administration, and who do have a record of giving to AIDS prevention, in which right now 11 million of the people out there who receive AIDS drugs worldwide, of the 17 million who receive them, get them from the Clinton Foundation. So no, I think when voters look at that, I agree.
So, Joe, hold on a second.
The opposition.
It's acceptable to you and those in your party for major foundations, for major organizations in foreign countries to give money to the Clinton Foundation and then get special access with the Secretary.
There wasn't special access.
That's not special access. Getting seated next to the Vice President of the United States, or getting meetings with Hillary Clinton. And by the way, the State Department won't release who exactly she met with until after the election.
Right, and we'll go. You know, there's a history of these foundations. We have the Points of Light Foundation. We have President George Herbert Walker Bush's foundation.
Also Saudi Arabia. There are many foreign countries.
You can't make that comparison.
And people weren't allowed in the United States because of alleged terror ties.
Why can't we make that comparison?
Because here's the deal. Clinton was the head of the State Department. It was very clear
that George W. Bush was not president of the United States when his father was getting millions of dollars for his foundation. By the way,
you're just trying to whitewash this, though, and make this not what it's really about. It's really about a collection of entities giving money and then getting this special access.
Joe, let me tell you one thing. This is about transparency. I know you want to filibuster this segment, but this is about transparency from the Clintons. Let me tell you, Clinton handed over 30,000 emails. FBI found 15,000 more emails that Clinton had not handed over. So yes, bring it all out. Have the Clinton Foundation come forth and disclose what's happening with these meetings and its access. We know that the fact that Doug Bann kept communicating to UMA over at the State Department, trying to seek favors, and it's going to come out. The truth will come out. And I tell you, it looks very poorly upon the Clintons and the foundation and the mere fact that the Clintons have benefited, made millions off of this setup that they've created.
They didn't make a penny off of that.
We'll have to leave this debate right there.
Yeah, we'll leave the debate. Go ahead.
Well, we are up against time. You know that. We don't have all the time in the world to go over this. Joe?
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Be with you.
Happy to have you here. And Mercedes, we'll talk to you again.
Where Donald Trump says he will give a major speech about immigration on Wednesday. So will he clear up the confusion over what he plans to do with millions and millions of immigrants living illegally in this country? We're also learning more about how both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are getting ready for their first debate 4 weeks from today. Plus, Clinton aide Uma Abedin finally dumps Anthony Weiner, her husband. Apparently sexting in bed with their young son was the last straw. And we're watching not one but 2 tropical systems that could turn into storms as they head toward the United States. It's hurricane season. Let's get to it.
Now, Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News deck.
And we begin with a Fox urgent. The FBI warning election officials nationwide to step up security after foreign hackers apparently successfully broke into one state's Board of Elections website and targeted at least one other. Sources now confirmed to Fox News that the FBI sent out an alert to law enforcement a little more than a week ago. They were just learning of it, warning about potential cyber attacks aimed at election systems. Yahoo News first obtained the alert, which reads in part, and I quote, "The FBI is requesting that states contact their Board of Elections and determine if any similar activity to their logs, both inbound and outbound, has been detected." Catherine Herridge with the news. She's live in Washington. Do we know what states were affected here, Catherine?
Well, so this 4-page alert, as you mentioned, was first obtained by Yahoo News and now confirmed by Fox independently, and it was sent to election officials after foreign hackers targeted voter registration databases in 2 states. Based on our reporting, we believe Illinois was affected, and we're working to confirm whether the second is Arizona. The FBI reports that 8 IP addresses, each a unique numeric code identifying an individual computer, used readily available software to scan the Board of Election websites for vulnerabilities. Then, after a successful breach, voter data was stolen. At least 1 IP address was used in both attacks, suggesting some level of coordination. The same threat prompted Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson to hold a conference call with state election officials in mid-August, offering federal experts to scan for additional weaknesses and shore up the voting systems. While Homeland Security is responsible for protecting critical infrastructure, such as the power grid, there is a growing consensus among some cyber specialists that the federal government should also provide some kind of safety net for the electoral process, whether it's the national committees from the DNC to the RNC to the actual voting itself, Shep.
Hey, also today we're getting a look at emails between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department while Hillary Clinton was in charge, and they're revelatory.
Well, that's right. The conservative group Citizens United sued for the emails, and it took 2.5 years for the State Department to release them. In one exchange from 2010, Clinton's closest aide, Huma Abedin, is talking with top foundation official Doug Band about potential guests for a lunch with China's president, including executives from UBS Wealth Management, Western Union, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Those organizations, all donors. A couple weeks later, Band writes a follow-up email to Abedin about where to sit the Rockefeller president. Quote, "Can we get her at Biden's table?" Abedin responds, "I'll ask VP office seating Biden's table."
Really, it's about access for big donors that gave anywhere from $1 to $10 million. They were gaining access that no other American or foreign entity, individual or corporation would be able to get if they weren't big donors to the foundation.
Well, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton campaign, as well as the State Department see it quite differently. They insist that these are conservative groups that are determined to dredge up whatever they can in the last couple of months before the election. And they also make the point that no one can prove that any laws were broken here, and part of their job at the State Department is to do what they call relationship building, Shep.
All right, Catherine Herridge in Washington for us. Catherine, thank you. Let's turn to John Bussey now, Associate Editor of the Wall Street Journal, and live with us here on the news deck. The matter of these emails, Eric Isaac Devore wrote today in Politico, there's a drip, drip, drip of revelations from the newly released emails demonstrating the messy overlap between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department, which leave even many Clinton-inclined voters wondering what she was really up to and why it's so hard for her to explain it. And that is the problem. It is one of perception.
And drip, drip is the right words. James Grimaldi and Rebecca Ballhaus of the Wall Street Journal have been reporting on the Clinton Foundation for almost a year now. And it is these kinds of issues, which is, was access possibly sold, or was access influenced by contributions to the Clinton Foundations or money paid for speeches, that sort of thing. It's going to be very difficult for Hillary Clinton to extract herself from this simply by saying that, look, these are important people, they would have had access anyways, which is the argument that she's been making. It's compelling, but the closeness with the relationship with the foundation is difficult.
It's the overlap that seems to be so hard to explain away. And I read, I believe, in the Wall Street Journal, you can prove the quid, you can prove the quo, it's the pro in the middle. It's that lack of being able to connect the dots, which is true with a lot of things like this, that leaves questions but does not leave any accusations of illegal doings, except by our political opponents.
Yeah, that's right, and that's the argument that Hillary Clinton has been making, that, you know, there's no proof that I did anything wrong. She has argued that I followed policy at the State Department that was in the interest of the American people. The problem is that it looks bad, and even the manner in which the family is dealing with the foundation after she possibly gets elected. She has said, if I become president, I won't be involved with the foundation. Bill's like, we're going to hand it over to, you know, someone else. But she has said that Chelsea will remain involved, and that's as close a relationship as you could possibly ask for. In other words, there seems to be a little bit of a tone deafness in the need to extract themselves from the operations of the foundation.
Bigger picture, what if you're the political opponent of a Clinton, you want to delegitimize? Just as Debbie Stabenow, the Democrat of Michigan, suggested today that is what they did to Barack Obama. She said he ran on the message of hope and change. Mitch McConnell and the Republicans knew if nothing changes for working people, they would lose hope. It's as simple as that. They wanted to create a scenario where people would lose hope, and they've done a pretty good job of it. And the suggestion is that they want to do this with Donald Trump. She calls him a huckster and says he will, even after this election, even if he loses, continue to cause problems for everyday Americans.
Well, I think that the Trump campaign is also making use of the Clinton Foundation problems, right? That they're focusing on that. The Clinton people come back and say, hey, wait a second, this is a foundation that's working on elimination of malaria, on treatment of AIDS. It's doing a lot of good work around the world. Let's keep our eye on that. So you have two different voices coming at the electorate. And if anything, these emails and the quids and the quos, even if there's no connecting tissue, is a problem for Hillary Clinton.
It goes back to the, quote, selling of the Lincoln bedroom, unquote. There's always been an accusation with the Clintons that with cash there is access, and where there is influence there is more access. And she's been fighting these accusations along with her husband for a quarter century.
Yeah, that's right. And it's once again in the news. All the more important for the Clintons to find a way to detach themselves from the foundation and to do that as soon as possible. So they can say, look, we did nothing wrong, at least in their minds, but we've heard the public and we've extricated ourselves. They said it's very hard to do that with the kinds of programs that they have where they're in with governments and companies doing what they say are good works, that's going to take time to do. But it's in their interest to really sharply divide, to put it all in the equivalent of a blind trust.
The optics, according even to Clinton supporters, are as follows. You set up an email system so that you can't be tracked very easily, so that the overlap of your foundation and the State Department is harder to find. Then during a fishing expedition, political rivals find out about it, and the cover-up, if that's what you want to call it, I'm not sure that's what it is, but if the cover-up is what her political opponents want to call it, the cover-up is much bigger than, well, there is no crime.
Yeah, and that's the narrative that her opponents are using. And also that the State Department person who did some work for the foundation was doing it on a voluntary basis. These are all difficult complexities and entanglements that it is very much in Clinton's interest to disentangle. Leaving Chelsea on, as an official with the foundation is not a way to go about this.
John Bussey from Wall Street Journal, thank you.
Pleasure.
The candidate for president, whose immigration policy helped him clinch the Republican nomination, is set to lay out at last exactly what the policy is. After a week of very mixed signals and postponing a speech on the same topic, Donald Trump now says he will pitch his immigration policy in what he calls a major speech on Wednesday. In recent days, Trump has said he was softening his immigration policy, which called for deporting some 11 million people in the United States illegally. When that didn't sit well with some conservative supporters, Donald Trump told CNN that some people said his position was actually hardening. Now, with exactly 70 days until the election, it seems some of Donald Trump's closest advisors don't know exactly where the candidate stands at all. His campaign manager talked to Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday.
All 11 million people who have come into this country illegally have to go. Do they or don't they?
And what he has said now is that he will look at that. But he wants to look, the softening is more approach than policy.
More approach than policy. But the problem is that's not what he said. What he said was there would be a deportation force and all 11 million had to go. And then if they could figure out a way, they'd come back in legally. Deportation force. It was November, but it's what he said. And it was very helpful getting him through the primaries. So does that mean Donald Trump would still deport every undocumented immigrant? His running mate Mike Pence doesn't know?
You're not pledging that there will be a removal of all undocumented immigrants. You're not saying that.
No, what I'm saying, Jake, what I've said to you a minute ago, and I want to be very clear, there will be no path to legalization, no path to citizenship. People that want to gain legal status, you heard Donald Trump say again and again, will have to leave the country.
Right, but what about the millions in this country right now?
Well,
what happens to them?
I think Donald Trump will articulate what we do with the people who are here.
He'll articulate what we do with them. That Mike Pence with Jake Tapper over on CNN over the weekend. Even though Governor Pence did not promise deportations, he said Donald Trump has stayed completely consistent, which he has not. At the same time, the head of the Republican National Committee indicated that Trump's position is, in fact, shifting, and even he wouldn't speak to the candidate's plans. His position is going to be known, writes Priebus with Chuck Todd on NBC over the weekend. So there was a lot of immigration talk, but no real immigration focus, no real understanding of what the immigration plan would be under a President Trump. So in theory, on Wednesday, we know. Of course, Trump's position was well known for months. Up until he hired the veteran pollster Kellyanne Conway to manage his campaign, the shifting immigration stance comes as the campaign manager says Trump will also court votes in black communities. Carl Cameron's in San Francisco, where Donald Trump is, holding fundraisers, I believe. But he's going to a black community to speak on Wednesday, right?
Well, on Wednesday it'll be the big immigration speech, and that'll take place in Phoenix, Arizona. Tonight he's got fundraisers here in Northern California in the Bay Area, and he'll start the day tomorrow in L.A. Next Saturday, he will go to an African-American church in Detroit. It'll be the first time he does that. He has gone to church before on Sundays during the campaign, but this will be the first time he'll go there to speak and take questions and talk to the parishioners. As for the immigration plan, there was a new variation to the story today from Rudy Giuliani on Fox and Friends. The former New York City mayor is a seriously top-level advisor now to Donald Trump and is participating in debate preps with him to the extent that they're going over briefing books and talking about issues. Today, Rudy Giuliani said that after the bad criminals are deported, and then the not-so-bad but still bad criminals are deported in a second wave, that it would be time for the Trump administration to take a look at the remaining population of undocumented immigrants and see how they might be handled. And as you heard in the earlier sound bites there, the question about legalization is not one that Trump is offering, lest any illegal immigrants go back to their home country and come back to the U.S. But it does leave open the question about what about those illegal aliens who don't decide to come out of the shadows and go home and want to stay. And while they might not have legalization, it leaves open the question that they might not be rounded up either. Shep?
Well, we do know that there's going to be a big advertising campaign coming here because we know the Trump campaign just spent, what, $10 million on it?
Yeah, and for them, that's a pretty big number. But when you compare it to what Hillary Clinton's put into TV advertising, it's pretty small. And it'll run in 9 key battleground states, likely to decide this election in which Trump trails in the polls in more than half of them. And virtually any one of the states that they'll be running in, if he were to lose those, it makes it very, very difficult for him to win the nomination. There are a number of battleground states where Trump is trailing that shouldn't be as hard as they are right now. North Carolina is an example of a state where Mitt Romney won and Trump's struggling against Hillary Clinton. That gives Republicans big pause. There's also a lot of anti-Trump groups now on the Republican side who are urging Republicans to start contributing to funds to elect the House and Senate members to protect their majorities in those 2 chambers for fear that Trump could not only lose a shot at the presidency, but also give up the House and Senate majorities in the Congress. Shep?
Carl Cameron on what appears to be a Chamber of Commerce day in San Francisco. Enjoy the trip, Carl. Thank you.
You bet.
Josh Letterman is with us now. He's the White House reporter for the Associated Press, and he's live out there in the yard where reporters hang out. Josh, something happened behind the scenes, something in polling, something with the philosophy of these new people who have surrounded him. Something happened that he decided to back off once and for all, the whole deportation force thing and the 11 million round them up and get them out. Something happened. Do you have reporting on that?
Well, you're absolutely right that something changed. And I think what we're seeing is really the largest example of the Trump campaign trying to figure out what their position is going to be on a major policy issue, with that debate basically taking place out in the open. Advisors saying he's considering this, he's considering that, acknowledging that the policy isn't totally settled. And I think the reason that we're seeing that is because the Trump campaign has realized that this is going to be a defining issue, if not the defining issue, of this election for Donald Trump. So they really want to get this one right, Shep. Now, what is right is either going to offend Trump's core base, these people for whom his hard stance on immigration was the whole reason that they were attracted to his candidacy in the beginning, or it's going to turn off those people in the middle of the electorate who Trump is really now increasingly trying to appeal to as he heads into this general election against Clinton. So, we're going to find out a little bit more clarity, hopefully, next Wednesday from Trump, but they're trying to thread a needle in a way that they can't please everybody.
The Internet, thanks to a certain morning show host, has attached this Amnesty Don, hashtag Amnesty Don label to him. If he gets tagged with an amnesty label, whether accurate or inaccurate, this part of his base that you just mentioned, it won't be pleased.
That's right. And what this speaks to is the fact that Trump went so hard after his Republican competitors in the primary on this issue of amnesty, really saying he had a stark contrast with people like Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, other candidates that talked about some path towards legalization or not deporting all of some 11 million people here illegally. So for Trump, we see him now trying to shift the conversation to other parts of his immigration policy, border security, the wall. But at the center of it, the big question everyone wants to know about immigration is, what do you do with those millions and millions of people here illegally? And if you are going to allow them to stay in some capacity, Trump says they're going to have to go back first. But if they're going to be able to do what they came here to accomplish, which is live here, you're going to have people criticizing him for amnesty.
Josh, Hillary Clinton came out in a speech last week and said that he's trading in racism, that's what's gotten him here, and really sort of eviscerated him. And then there was this silence from Republicans. No Paul Ryan, no Mitch McConnell, nobody standing up to defend him. And I mean no establishment Republican leaders. What are we to make of that?
Well, I think we're to take them at face value. If you look back at some of the comments those same leaders you mentioned have made, for instance, Paul Ryan saying after the debate about, Muslims that, is an example of a textbook comment of racism. So you see Republicans here trying not to abandon their nominee in a way that's going to imperil them in the election, but also not to set a precedent that the Republican Party stands for the kinds of divisive comments that Hillary Clinton has called bigoted and racially motivated, and that Republicans don't want to see saddled around their neck for many elections to come.
Yep. Josh Letterman, reporter for the Associated Press and live at the White House. Josh, thanks so much.
Thanks, Shep.
So Wednesday is the day. Wednesday's the day for what they're billing as a major speech. Donald Trump's been tweeting today that he's out looking for a bigger venue because so many people want to come to this. Again, it's in Arizona. And we'll find out, are all Muslims banned? Are people from terrorist-sponsoring states banned? Are refugees from Syria banned? Are people who are here now going to be tossed? And if so, in what way? And what happened to deportation forces? Presumably we will hear something to clarify all of that, because so far we don't have it. We don't have it from Donald Trump, who was off the campaign trail yesterday, and getting ready for the first presidential debate next month. That's what we read. Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, told Fox News Sunday his debate style makes him the unpredictable X factor. Washington Post reports the Republican nominee is not doing any rehearsals and won't do any rehearsals. Quoting here, Trump is not holding any mock debates, proudly boasting that a performer with his talents does not need that sort of prepping. A spokesman for Hillary Clinton says her aides are aware that Donald Trump is capable of anything, and that's a quote, adding, "We are fully expecting to have our hands full." Mike Emanuel is live in the D.C. newsroom. We read about all these people who were with him in your home state of New Jersey, Mike, at his country club there with cheeseburgers and bacon cheeseburgers and Coca-Cola, names we all know, but no real debate preparation, no run-through, no pepper drills.
Well, that's right, and there's quite a contrast on the Democratic side where I'm told Hillary Clinton is engaged in intense preparation, trying to be ready for anything coming from the unpredictable Donald Trump. Senior Clinton campaign officials expect Trump will likely go for broke, seeing it as a last best opportunity to turn this race around, so they're trying to prepare her for that. Her spokesman Brian Fallon says about Clinton, quote, "She feels like it is a proving ground, that this is a job interview. I think she will approach the debate with a great deal of seriousness and a sense of purpose, and also keenly aware that Donald Trump is capable of anything." A veteran of the Obama presidential campaign says it's going to be challenging.
Trump is difficult.
Meanwhile, Trump aides fire back that Hillary Clinton is too scripted, and as you heard at the top, that essentially Donald Trump is the exciting X factor in this whole debate scenario. Shep.
And her opponents are giving her grief over her campaign schedule.
Well, that's right. One day with a public appearance last week, and her schedule so far this week features more fundraising, but we don't expect a lot of public events. Clinton gave a speech last Thursday in Reno accusing Trump of taking a hate movement mainstream, but it's been a quieter stretch these days. Her spokesman Brian Fallon says when many Americans are enjoying the final days of summer vacation and less focused on politics, she's been working hard to make sure the campaign will have the money resources it needs to execute its strategy during the home stretch. No doubt also some debate prep as well.
Probably so. And if your opponent is seen to be going off the tracks, get out of the way. I mean, that's politics 101 from a long time ago. So we'll see what happens. Thank you, Mike. It just got a lot easier to make money using a drone. We'll explain how the new FAA rules are helping businesses and what you need to know if you're planning on flying one. New drone rules just came out. brand new drone rules. Wonder how many drones there will now be. And what time of day can they fly? We have answers.
The fire story. This one over Donald Trump's tweets following the shooting death of Nakia Aldridge in Chicago. She is the cousin of Chicago Bulls superstar Dwayne Wade. Critics accusing Trump of politicizing the incident. But the Chicago police superintendent says he'd welcome Trump to the city if it would stop the violence. Mike Tobin's in Chicago with more on that. Mike?
Well, Stuart, as you mentioned, this quickly entered the political arena with Donald Trump blowing up Twitter, the first of his tweets over the weekend, saying Dwayne Wade's cousin was just shot and killed walking her baby in Chicago. Just what I've been saying. African Americans will vote Trump. Another later in the weekend reading, inner city crime is reaching record levels. African Americans will vote Trump because they know I will stop the slaughter going on. Here's a response from the police superintendent in Chicago.
As far as what Mr. Trump said, I don't have a whole lot of comment on that. If you have a magic bullet to stop the violence anywhere, not just in Chicago, but in America, then please share it with us.
Now, the two young men arrested for the death of Nakia Aldridge had extensive prison resumes, both felons, both of them out on parole, one of them wearing an ankle monitor, one on a break from his ankle monitor. Their intended target was a man who came onto their turf. One report says he looked at them funny. The superintendent says this is a noteworthy case not because of the connection to an NBA star, but because it is a prime example of the difficulties faced by Chicago police and the people on the south and west sides of the city. 9 people were shot and killed over the weekend, 50 wounded by gunfire. Stuart?
Mike Tobin, thank you very much. Race is clearly back on the political front burner. San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick refusing to stand for the national anthem, and Trump planning to speak at an African-American church this Saturday in Detroit. To former GOP presidential candidate Herman Cain, who says Trump is making the right move. All right, Herman, should Mr. Trump go to Chicago and meet with the superintendent of police in Chicago? Should he do that?
Yes, because one of the characteristics that has made Trump distinguish himself is his ability to listen. He will listen to the police chief. He will listen to the people in the community to get the ideas. One of the signs of a great leader, Stuart, which is one of the reasons I think so many people are attracted to Trump, is his ability to listen and then formulate targeted solutions. There's no silver bullet, because every city with these kind of problems will be different. You need a listener, and maybe it's resources. And that's the type of thing that I believe Trump will learn by going there.
Well, some of the incidents which have been reported recently make me feel that this is very much a divided nation. Is it? I mean, it is, but is it getting worse?
It is a divided nation through the lens of the media, because the lens of the liberal media, by the way, they highlight all of the negative stuff, all of the senseless killings, the rioting in Ferguson, the rioting in Baltimore, and all of that. That's what people see. If you only see that aspect of America, it comes across as a divided nation. But people who experience other people where they live, we are not a divided nation. People don't see this in their everyday lives. They only see it through the lens of the liberal media. This is why the leader of the nation has to set the right tone such that people understand that you're looking at it through two different lenses. That's what it is. The nation is not divided.
What do you make of the Kaepernick incident, if I can call it that? What's your reaction?
My reaction is he's not aware that we have these two lenses that I'm talking about. He is reacting to the liberal lens, which a lot of people reacted to. He doesn't understand that that doesn't represent the majority of black America or the majority of America. And secondly, I don't think it is appropriate to protest one part that he sees through a very narrow liberal lens when that flag stands for a whole lot more. It stands for our men and women in the service. It stands for the history of this country. It stands for how far we have come, not the incidents that he sees through that narrow lens. I don't agree with it, but he has every right to do it, and I think probably too much attention is being given to it. That flag, I think, represents a lot more.
What Kaepernick had to say has been taken, I think, as being anti-Trump. But let me read for you what Kaepernick also said, and this has not been reported in the media or anyplace else. He went on to say, we have a person running for president who, if any other person did what she did, they'd be in prison. That's not been reported in the media at all, to my knowledge, and he said it.
It has not. And Donald Trump is not a she. So obviously he knows about what's been going on relative to Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, the email scandal, the outright lies relative to what she said about the FBI director. So he's paying attention to some parts of what's going on in politics. That's the good news. But he really does not have a good understanding, in my view, of the two black Americas in terms of what's happening in some of these inner cities that need extra attention, not pandering, not giveaways, not free stuff. That's not what Donald Trump is all about.
Herman, we are told that if the vote were taken today, Donald Trump would get maybe 8% of the black vote. Do you think he can get that up to 15 or 20% with this outreach program? Honestly, do you think he could?
I honestly do, Stuart, and here's why. I don't believe that number that says 8%. I happen to know from previous presidential elections, some people might tell a pollster during the exit poll one thing, but they said they voted a different way. Why? They don't want the intimidation from some of the people around them, or even the pollsters can sometimes intimidate some of the black voters. So they might tell them one thing, but I believe he can get it up, and here's why. Donald Trump is telling black America, blacks in these inner cities, the truth. Not all of them are going to accept it and believe it once he starts to share with them these statistics. I share these statistics all the time, and you do. I think he can get them up. I get callers all the time who say they're waking up to the hypocrisy of the Democrats. They're waking up to the failed policies of the Democrats. I believe he can significantly increase that number. And going to some of these inner cities and going to a black church in Detroit, I think are excellent steps to getting the facts out.
Herman Cain, thanks as always for joining us, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure, Stuart.
Next case, Iran.